Lore Together is proud to be part of the Boss Rush Games Network. Feel free to find out more at bossrushgames.com/network. Hi, I'm Safi.
And I'm Mystic.
And this is Lore Together. This is the podcast where a husband and wife team go over all the storytelling, world building, and characters of video games because it's what we like to do together. We lore together.
Yep, and this is episode 77.
Woohoo, yes, and not a dystopian cyberpunk landscape.
We'll get to cyberpunk eventually.
I know.
Yeah.
Now was not the time.
You know, honestly, if I had thought of it beforehand, I would have done it, but I didn't think of it.
I still think now is not the time. But thanks for coming to the, even for non-patrons, the last episode we will be releasing in 2022. It's been a great year for the podcast.
Yeah. But before getting to the episode, if you want to contact us, you can do that on Twitter and Instagram at Lore Together, on Reddit under the username at Lore Together Pod, and through email at loretogether@gmail.com. And if you'd like to support the podcast, and we hope you do, you can do that in two different ways. One is giving us a 5-star review wherever you are listening. That includes Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Podchaser, I think. There's a couple other ones out there.
Yes.
And if you'd like to monetarily support the podcast, you can do that over on Patreon at patreon.com/loretogether, where you can pay a per episode pledge to get early access to episodes, as well as access to our Let's Plays early, as well as our, or I should say, my reading of the Unreal novels, which I bet most of you didn't know there was an Unreal novel unless you listened to our episode.
Yeah, it's a wild ride, and Mystic's actually reading it in the order as suggested by one of the writers.
Yeah,
because it was not published the way it was supposed to.
Don't tell your editor they have to finish this before you let them go.
Yeah. Hey, we're gonna make you unemployed in less than a week, but make sure this book just looks A-okay, right?
Yeah.
And then he just shuffles it like it's a deck of cards. Like that's
pretty much.
That's pretty much what happened with the chapters, guys. So we're going to be reading it in order. I should say Mystic will.
Yeah.
We've got the playthroughs of Lorik in Skyrim and Laura in Dragon Age Origins. And a series that has already got its first vote of what we should do as for the patrons. So if you like to weigh in on who Laura should be romantically entangled with, if anyone, become a patron. Yeah, become a patron. But outside of that, we also just have this show that we appreciate that you're listening to, regardless of whether or not you're a patron. And I have no idea what Mystic is talking about this week.
Okay. So I'm going to butcher pronunciation here because it's a French name.
The way you said that at first, it's interesting you said that because I immediately just thought back to the long, long, long ago video of, okay, so this is the Earth. Pretty sweet Earth, right?
I want to say the game, you're not going to know this game at all. Well, actually, you might.
We'll see.
Very aesthetic, painterly looking platformer from around, I didn't actually write down the year. Great. I want to say 2019.
Aesthetic, painterly platformer?
Yeah.
First of all, you're making me play a platformer for the live stream, so I'm upset.
Yep.
How dare you?
You'll be fine. It's more of a puzzle platformer than
no, to two genres I do not play on the regular. Thanks.
As by that I mean it's not as like twitchy or reflex based. It's a little bit more just like what order you do things in.
Okay. I have no idea.
Okay, so this is, I'm going to probably get this wrong. Gris? Gris.
Oh, Gris, yes.
I am going to just keep saying Gris. Created by Spanish company Nomada Studio and published by Devolver Digital.
But that's supposed to be French pronunciation? Gris?
French or Spanish. I heard they're both the same.
I only have knowledge on French pronunciation as much as I have lived around Spanish speakers the majority of my life. I only picked up such little.
Yeah. I'm going to say Gris because it is a name we're going to see a lot, and I don't want to keep having to just whatever. So it's Gris.
Gristle if you're feeling offensive.
No, I'm not going to do Gristle. it's a platformer with a amazing visual and audio aesthetic.
You know what? I have heard of this.
You have?
But there's so many indie games that are painterly that I was like, I don't know. But I have not, it has not lived in my head rent free like some other indie games have. So
yeah. Got awards for Best Character Animation, Best Visuals, Best Indie Game, Best Gameplay, and won Games for Impact, which is games that it's an award for a thought-provoking game with a pro-social meaning or message.
We love a game with a message.
Yeah, at the Game Awards 2019.
That's awesome. I didn't even realize there was a message in this, so this will be fun.
So what do you know of this then? I
know it's a female protagonist, if I remember correctly, or at least the character design. I assumed it was a female protagonist. And it seems the animation for her is very bouncy. And it does seem to be kind of like, if I remember, a muted color palette. Like, she is usually gray, hence Gris.
Yeah. But you know nothing about, like, the story or anything? The
story, the antagonist, or anything of that nature, I don't know at all.
Antagonist is an interesting word, actually. When you picture platform, you're probably picturing some sort of enemy. There's not really. I mean, there are enemies here, but it's not like you're jumping on Goombas or anything like that. Right. So, some also called this a walking simulator. It's literally in the listing for tags on Steam for this game.
Really?
Yeah. It's a label that is tossed around far too much by people who think that any game that is not Dark Souls or Elden Ring, you know, the tough, I am the toughest dude, bro, or I spent 500 hours getting down the minutia of this game.
As somebody who likes a cozy game and has been indulging in that recently for my own sanity, a lot of those cozy games I would never categorize as a walking simulator.
Yeah.
Because you literally, Skyrim is more of a walking simulator than some of, like, I imagine from what little I know of Gris to be. Like, that, because in Skyrim, for long swaths of time, you can just walk.
And pick flowers.
And, oh my gosh, I love it.
So this is going to be a hard one to get the story on. That's not Uncharted territory for us. We've covered difficult to parse games before.
Dude, wait, what was the one with changing size again called? That we did recently?
Yeah, I was going to say, this game has a less defined story than Superliminal.
Superliminal. Oh my god. If we could do Superliminal, I think we can do this. I think we'll be fine.
However, it's a game that's very wide open to interpretation. And
we've done that too.
Yeah.
We've done that literally with Dear Esther.
Yeah. This game has no text, no dialogue. So I'm going to be describing a lot of events and locations. So
there is a lot of platformers, especially modern indie ones, that I feel like there's not a lot of explanation. They just like, here's a premise, and it's a well thought out premise, but just go with it.
Yeah.
Like, what Braid is the one that comes to mind. That's
we'll
like
do Braid eventually.
Too. Yeah, there's not a lot. There's a lot going on in Braid, but not a lot of explanation as to what it actually is.
I guess I should say there's not any exposition in this game.
Okay, that's fair.
So, and yeah, no dialogue, nothing like that. So.
Okay.
As such, I think we should touch on the visuals and audio a little bit, since those do carry much of the storytelling weight.
Yeah, okay.
Not to gush too much, the art in the game makes great use of color. Everything is animated fluidly, and it's all done in a hand-drawn, watercolor-painted look.
Which I always love. I mean, remember when that was revolutionary with Okami?
Yes, another game we'll get to.
Yeah, that was, I remember, like, everybody was
But
like,
there's difference. Okami is, like, kind of cel-shaded in a way.
Yes,
or
it is.
Ink-shaded, at least. This is, like, you see individual strokes and everything of, like, the pen.
Ooh, that's very cool.
And we do start with kind of, like, simpler scenes, and then we get more varied colors and a lot more intricate detail as we go as well. It's one of those games where you get, you know, the world building, it happens visually.
Right.
And as we said, it won a bunch of awards for visuals and style. In terms of music and sound, this is simply an amazing sounding game. You are going to be listening to the soundtrack, I almost guarantee it.
Do we know who made the soundtrack?
Berlinist.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I don't know if I know that one.
In my blind first hour that I did for patrons, like during the opening sequence, I was like, Berlin, it's okay, I have to look that person up. Because like even just the opening music, I was like, oh, this is good.
There's some soundtracks you listen to and you're like, yeah, this is amazing. I'm going to listen to this again.
Yeah, it's kind of like very in the background until it needs to be. And then it's just enough like vocals, crescendo, and silence to kind of really sell what you're seeing.
Oh, man.
Or at least the emotion of what you're seeing, because this is not a realistic game, let's be honest.
We all know we love a good soundtrack in this house in general.
So we follow a young woman named Gris, we think.
That's fair.
It's the commonly accepted name of the fandom and press, but there's no actual evidence for it within the game itself.
Well, I mean, it's going to be easier for us to refer to her as Gris rather than the woman.
You can do that. I'm going to say Gris.
Okay. I didn't realize I was offending.
For me, honestly, I'm probably offending more to anyone who natively speaks any of the languages that.
Well, I'm saying it a little bit more French-like, and I'm not even going to say I sound like I'm a French person, but I'm going to lean into that because I don't get to use that skill as much anymore.
We open with her singing, her dress flowing around her as she sings, cupped in the hand of a giant statue of a woman.
Oh, wow.
The song is sweet and haunting all at once, and then suddenly the statue's hand begins to break beneath her.
Wow.
She tries to sing more, but can't muster her voice. Like, she's lost her voice. And the palm starts to crack and fall apart around her. She runs, but as she's kind of like hugging or leaning against the thumb, everything starts cracking and exploding around her, and she falls.
Oh, wow.
And she is falling a long way down as the credits roll. I'm kind of reminded of Mist a little bit, following the Mist book falling through the Starfisher. I
immediately think of Alice in Wonderland, though.
That works, too.
Mm-hmm.
Finally, she lands slumped to the ground, curled in a ball.
Wow.
The game is very slow to introduce things, so all we can do eventually is walk from side to side. If we try to jump, she just collapses in the ground for a moment and then stands back up.
Okay.
Slowly as we walk more, we can eventually jump. I'm kind of reminded a bit of Stray, like when we fell all the way in Stray. You kind of can't do anything but limp for a little bit.
Yeah, different premise, though, in a sense that Stray, there's a little bit of buying into the conceit of you being a cat, whereas this, they're like, either you into it or you're not.
Stray was more realistic.
Well, so, yes, in ways, yes. But yeah, it sounds like Gris is more just going to be about either you're into this or you're not, which a lot of platformers do anyway.
We're in a black and white and gray world. The only real color is the blue splash of Gris' hair. We begin to explore the world, finding ruins and also finding little glowing orbs scattered around. These orbs follow Gris like fireflies. These help us overcome obstacles, building bridges like constellations for us to cross chasms.
Okay, so I'm assuming you use those to jump to certain points.
They kind of auto move. You don't control over them.
Oh, okay.
So when you get to a place that they can be helpful, they kind of boop, 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 like make a path.
Okay.
Provided that you have enough of them.
Ah.
Eventually, though, we find the remains of a statue, just an upturned palm like the one we started the game in, and Gris simply stops in the middle of it. She begins to float but curls into a ball from him before seemingly snapping out of it, and suddenly our world changes from black and white and gray and to one with color, but only the colors of red and purple.
Interesting.
Eventually we find a tree in this red world, and our little fireflies we've been bringing with us fly up into the sky, becoming 3 stars in a large constellation. We continue through the ruins of the world, eventually sliding down a long slope of sand, only to fall from the precipice into a chasm below. Here we finally get our title screen. It's a red world with Gris silhouetted against a giant sun.
Okay.
It's always fun when the title screen takes a while to get to.
It's always a question of like, how long do I have to wait for this title screen? Or it's funny when you get into the middle of the game and then suddenly you're like, wait, now's the title screen? What?
Yeah, a couple that come to mind immediately is Inquisition. Dragon Age Inquisition seems to take a good amount of time.
It's very modern cinema in the way that they handled that introduction. That they want you to be asking all of the questions right away before you you're in there.
I think the longest one I've experienced is Kingdom Come Deliverance.
You mentioned that you were like 2 hours in. You're like
more than that probably.
And you're like, now's the title screen. I think I remember you screaming that in our home. Now is the title screen.
I think I was near on to 10 hours when the title screen came up.
And you said
because I talked to everybody and did everything, and then it was like then plot happens. And then more plot happens, and then more plot happens, and then there's a title screen. I was like, what?
They were like, well, I mean, if you're invested,
we'll get to that this coming year as well.
At some point. Is that your New Year's resolution, to cover Kingdom Come Deliverance?
No, because it's not that difficult to give a game. A New Year's resolution would be like, I'm going to cover Kingdom Hearts, but no, we're not doing that.
Oh, God, no!
We're not doing that anytime soon.
Oh my gosh, that's so many layers. That you want to talk about a convoluted game.
So eventually, traversing through this windswept wasteland of red, with powerful gusts pushing us backwards, unless we find shelter before the storm hits.
Oh.
The storms themselves are like paint flowing in water past the screen, and it's a very cool effect, and the music gives us just that creeping feeling of an incoming storm.
Oh, okay.
You know, it took me a couple tries of being pushed back to be like, oh, the music increases. Like, I didn't quite catch up on that at first. It's within this storm-filled waste that we uncover the first ability Gris gets, and that is heavy.
Oh, okay.
One nitpick here. The game is not at all friendly to keyboard players.
Oh, great.
It is perfectly playable on keyboard. Like, I had no problem making jumps with spacebar and everything. But, for instance, with heavy, it tells you press B. Well, that's not what you're pressing on the keyboard. You're pressing K.
Oh.
It's giving you prompts for a controller, and there are no prompts for keyboard.
So you just have to know the conversion, so to speak.
Yeah, it's annoying. It's kind of irritating. Like, you don't expect that from a developer these days.
You'd expect it to be a little bit more fluid.
I've seen it in AAA games, though, as well, where I have no controller plugged in and all the button prompts are controller prompts. So
right. I think they assume that the main audience prefers a controller. And
for a platformer, yeah.
Yeah, especially. Because I think a lot of people think the reactivity is better for that. But for me, I didn't really start gaming until we did PC gaming, so the controller is not that great for me most of the time.
Was it B? No, it wasn't B. It was X they were telling me to press.
Right.
And it was K is what I had to press.
Oh.
B was the other one later in the game.
Oh my gosh. So this problem comes up again and again. Okay.
Only twice. So it's not a huge problem, but annoying enough.
Okay.
What made it more annoying, though, is when you first start the game, there's no settings menu. There's just quit or start.
Oh, okay.
So you can't check it.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Heavy changes Gris' flowing dress into a solid cube, which weighs her down and also allows her to break things as well as fix things, depending on context. We'll get there. And it also weighs her down so that she can withstand a consistent storm, because there is a storm that kind of you can't get past without this.
So she gets the Kirby Stone ability.
Except you can move with it.
Oh, interesting. Nice.
So better than Kirby.
Definitely better than Kirby.
So we head back, and you can break open some new areas. This game is kind of linear exploration.
Okay, I can dig it.
It's a little bit of it is like, where the heck do I go? Mm-hmm. But also there's usually just little tiny paths that you can take off.
Okay.
Where you have to go.
Okay.
It doesn't let you go off for long, though.
All right.
Like, you may loop around into a path you've done before, but you're never going to get unable to get back to where you were.
Right. Okay.
And try to figure out what to do. So we break open some new areas, one of which causes us to fall and fall and fall into a gray, dark place.
Wow, some more falling down shafts then.
There's a lot of falling in this game. There's also a lot of, I wouldn't say flying, but shooting upwards as well.
Okay.
Don't try to apply logic to the layout of this land.
That's fine. I can live with that.
Crashing to the ground, we find a black reflection below us surrounded by black butterflies. Only the reflection is surrounded by butterflies. They do not exist around Gris herself.
Oh. Weird.
There's also many broken and cracked statues here, and all the statues are of the same figure, clearly weeping or in despair. And they're all the same figure that we saw at the beginning holding Gris.
If this is like that ancient Roman city again.
That was Forgotten City. Was it Forgotten City? The Forgotten City.
Okay.
Yeah, that was the game. The Forgotten City. Our only recourse here, there's no way back. The only thing we can do is kind of see that some of the statues can be broken with heavy.
Oh, okay.
After a few heavy drops, the black butterflies suddenly fly from the reflection and sending us up through the ceiling above us, way up, emerging from the ground into a strangely mechanical place.
Ooh.
It's here we find our first constructive use for heavy, as it allows us to activate the clockwork machinery, which opens up more paths for us to explore.
Interesting. So does everything still look like ruins, or is this...
No, this place kind of feels more like... I remember doing my blind first hour, I said that it reminded me of Little Talks by Monsters and Men, the music video.
Oh, yeah.
It kind of has a... It's a cleaner vibe. It's still a little ruined, but it's a cleaner vibe.
Okay, yeah.
Eventually we come to a mat, and we're skipping large puzzles and exploration and stuff.
That's fair. That's fair.
Eventually we come to a massive piece of machinery that, when we get started, levitates the whole platform we're on, ground and everything, up into the sky, where we follow broken statue fragments to a waiting statue hand. Though this time we have more of the statue than just the one hand. Now there are two.
Hooray!
There, Gris ponders for a moment, and then our world shifts from one of only reds and purples to one of green as well.
Okay.
So now we have multiple colors coming in.
But it's interesting that, like, so red and purple makes sense when you think about it on the rainbow, because they're kind of like right next to each other. Well, not right next to each other. They're kind of like on the opposite ends, but red makes purple.
They are complementary colors.
No, they're not. Red and green are complementary colors.
I'm making my color names confused. It depends how you look at the color wheel. I believe red and purple are near each other, because you go from blue to violet to red.
Yeah, exactly. Because red makes purple.
Yeah.
So, but complementary, I thought, meant like the one that's opposite of them on the color wheel.
Possibly.
If I'm remembering.
I'm a writer, not an artist.
Okay. You know what? It's been years since my color wheel theory terminology.
Same here.
So, but yeah, I thought red and green were complementary. I just know that red and purple are next to each other.
Yes.
So,
But yeah, it works.
But green is not next to either one of those colors. So that's why I find it interesting. So it's not trying to ease us in that rainbow scale.
It still works though, because it's all very watercolory, pastel, and everything.
Yeah.
So we slide down and down into a great forest, which is probably why we choose green. Mm-hmm. And things get a bit harder with the platforming here. We have a few timed jumps and stuff. It's never too bad.
He says, trying to reassure me.
Well, you're never having to fall far.
Okay.
You know, there's a lot of rest points and stuff too. You know, it's like 4 or 5 jumps, rest. It's not as bad as, you know, you've seen me do Mario Odyssey with the final level and stuff. So.
Oh yeah, I hate that. I was like, glad that's not for me.
Luckily, we do have some help here in the form of a small robot plant thing.
Small robot plant. It's a robot made of plants?
It looks like a robot with a cube head, but the head has a tiny crack that has a leaf coming out of it.
Okay, so maybe it's a statue that's being eroded by a plant?
But it's able to move around?
Or maybe it's a seed pod?
I don't know. There's more than one of these, but we only see the one for a while. Mm-hmm. And this little guy will follow us around once we knock down apples for it to eat from the trees using heavy.
Oh, that's adorable.
And it starts doing heavy with us. Like it starts dropping, which you need to do to get past some stuff.
Oh, wow, that's adorable. It's like, I made a friend. We're going to do the same things now.
He's not with us for long, though.
Okay.
With this little guy's help, we eventually unlock a new ability, double jumping, but not quite the same way you might be used to using double jumping. There's some nuance to this one.
Okay.
Essentially, it's more of a float ability with a small upward aspect when you start floating.
Okay.
The true double jump requires some help. There are now small red butterflies around the world as well. and sometimes they're stuck in jars we can break open with heavy, but these red butterflies will rocket Gris upwards for quite a distance. And sometimes we have to chain these butterfly jumps together.
But your usual double jump ability is, again, more like Kirby in that you...
If Kirby just had one float and then... Yeah.
Yes.
So.
Yeah.
It's more like you hold down the button and you'll stay up in the air longer.
Oh, so it's more like Princess Peach in Super Mario 2. Okay.
Yeah. Through this forest, we do eventually find more of those black butterflies atop a tower. They all coalesce into a large bird that stalks us and screams at us, pushing us backwards, much like the storm we had to face before.
Oh, thanks, butterflies. This is exactly what I asked for.
The one thing it can't seem to handle, though, is the ringing of bells, and there's large bells in some of these towers. So once we finally evaded enough...
You can ring my bell. Ring my bell. Sorry.
So once we finally evaded enough over the course of a lot of platforming and traversing the environment, including jumping into high towers in the sky, again, don't try to logic this game, we managed to dissipate the bird entirely with a big bell. Basically, we make it hit the bell itself. It gets weird. You can figure it out, I'm sure, when you play. I just pointed at Safi Bling and not you. Like, you could figure it out, but you're probably not going to get there when we play.
No, when we play. We'll see if I decide to finish the game or not.
Though at the very last moment of its death throes, you can barely make out a humanoid face where the bird face was.
Oh. Oh, that's creepy.
Our little firefly dudes then allow us to get to another hand of another statue. This one is more complete still with just the top of the head missing.
Cool. Okay.
What I'm going to call Gris' emotions bring the color blue into our world and also causes it to start raining.
Okay.
The rain will let us see some platforms that are otherwise invisible, and the water will come into play more as well.
All right.
Crossing a large body of water, we bid goodbye to our little firefly dude to continue to build the large constellation in the sky. I haven't been mentioning it, but there are also some out-of-the-way sigils we can collect, kind of. They're basically a bunch of circles with 3 dots next to them. Getting all of these, and there are so many I think I missed most. As I said, they're out of the way.
Okay.
These will unlock a secret ending, so we'll touch on that later.
Okay.
And it's not so much a secret ending as it is a secret scene, because it takes place before the ending. It's weird.
Ah, okay. It's like a qualifier to the ending.
Yeah. We slowly work our way down into the deep and dark caves lit only by small shafts of light or more frequently bioluminescent plants and creatures.
I love a scene with a bioluminescent plant. Like those, I'll never get tired of bioluminescence in any kind of setting.
Eventually we have to use our heavy ability to get through some water, and water here is not what you'd imagine it to be. It behaves very oddly. Sometimes it pools on the floor like you'd expect.
Okay.
Sometimes it's suspended from the ceiling.
All
and
right.
sometimes it's a band between spaces with air above and below. Kind of reminds me of Riven.
Yeah. It's, that's interesting. All right.
After jumping across giant mushrooms and traversing more caves, we get to a large white tree that unlock another ability. But first we have to venture into the nearby ice caves. Basically we need firefly dudes to unlock abilities.
Okay.
The magic and puzzles here are a bit weird. I kind of want to touch on it even though it's not really a big story point. But it's just kind of a weird thing where Gris will get frozen but not stuck. It's more like there's a frozen copy of her made, but it's timed.
Interesting.
And you have to use these copies of yourself to platform or to hold platforms back. It gets weird.
Wow.
Took me some time, so I wanted to mention it. But doing all this, we finally get the ability to swim, which means there's going to be a lot of water traversal about to take place.
Do we have another water temple?
Well, it's not a water temple, but there is definitely water. It's not as bad as you're thinking. It's a lot of... The swimming isn't a huge deal. You can swim very fast, and it's pretty fluid. Wow.
How did it... Wow, Mystic. Wow. I need some time to recover from that.
Time's up. So... We can swim, and it goes pretty well, and it's not super difficult to swim around. There's some interesting puzzles with water or moving through water, but it's not as crazy as you might expect. It's a lot of just traversing caves and taking care of where water is or isn't.
Okay.
So, much of this game is symbolism, and some of it seems to be for the sake of being aesthetically pleasing. Sometimes I'm not sure which it is, like the following scene. We collect a bunch of firefly dudes underwater and take them to a central area to unlock what I thought was going to be a new ability. Instead, we get a friend in the form of a giant glowing sea turtle that begins to swim down into the darkness, allowing us to see in the dark depths with its naturally red light.
Whoa.
I have no idea what it means. I still don't know what it means. It could just be there because it looks cool. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe it just looks cool.
As I said, this game is very open to interpretation.
I always like the idea of turtles too, just because of that that idea of the world on the back of a turtle.
Yes. It's turtles all the way down.
I mean, I could live with that, actually, if that was true. I could live with it.
It's not true, but you could live with it.
I could live with it if it was, yeah.
This leads us to another air pocket, and by air pocket, I mean giant space that makes no sense because, again, symbolism or aesthetics.
Okay.
Or just level design. I mean, obviously some of this is just gameplayification.
There's nothing wrong with just making something the way it is because it's just fun to play.
Yeah.
I'm not here against that.
Here we find yet another statue we can stand in the palm of, and this time things go a bit different.
Uh-oh.
This statue has a head and a face.
Oh.
When Gris stands on its palm, the eyes of the statue open, and Gris floats like before, but now instead of getting an array of color, we get stars and suns and... Okay, some yellow is added to the world as well.
Okay, yeah, that would make sense.
Suddenly, the black butterflies are back, and an oily black shape whips around the statue, breaking it into pieces.
No. So just aesthetically, whatever the statues represent, Gris is pro-statue, butterflies anti-statue.
Yeah, obviously we'll get to interpretations at the end.
Yeah, I'm just trying to keep up with what the metaphors are, if they are metaphors.
Yeah, there's definitely... By the time I was done my first hour, I pretty much picked up on what was going on. It's a bit harder since I'm just describing things to you. I'm sure.
That's fair. I think it'll be easier to see once I play it.
Yeah. Gris runs up onto the breaking statue towards some red butterflies, only being engulfed by the massive black ooze. But, and this is all in cutscene, so we don't have to worry about this, but using the red butterflies, she jumps, bursting from the mass as she flies upwards.
Oh, nice.
The black stuff forms into a bird that follows her until she plunges upwards into some suspended water. The bird becomes formless in the liquid and then becomes a large eel. It follows us through the cave, splitting into two eels. Then the eels open their mouths, sending thousands of small eels towards us as the screen goes black. Gris is alone in the darkness until there is suddenly a glow from a jellyfish.
Suddenly the Moonlight Jelly song from Stardew Valley is playing.
You're doing Stardew Valley at some point. I'm not doing that game.
Oh yeah, I'll do that at some point. Don't worry. But no, I digress. I'm here for this jellyfish in this game right now.
Swimming further along through caves that light up as we go, we are begin to swim down into the darkness with just a little tiny bits of light from bioluminescent plants and stuff. When literal jump scare, like when I played this, I practically fell out of my chair because I wasn't expecting it. Giant eel is chasing us upwards again.
Thanks. That's what I wanted. More giant eel.
It's trying to eat us, and we can stay just barely ahead of us. When it's about to eat us, and we see all these other fish and other animals and also fleeing upwards, the eel has us in its jaws. It's about to chomp down when it explodes in red light as the giant sea turtle emerges from within it, breaking the eel apart.
Oh, wow. Whoa. All right.
Returning to the surface, we are now in an ethereal world filled with ruins like before, but now there's more of them, and they are ghostly blue, and they pop in and out of existence based on light sources.
Whoa. Okay. Interesting.
Yeah, it's a weird one. It threw me for a little bit, too. It's definitely the most out of place compared to the rest of the game so far. And this is where we kind of finish our game. Here, Gris finally gains the ability to fully sing again. There was a point early in the game where we first learned the button for it. Again, not labeled appropriately for keyboard. It is the L button if you were playing on keyboard.
Right.
But up until now, Gris has not been able to sing. Basically, she would start and then wouldn't be able to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So it'd be like...
Oh.
Yeah. Now she can sing, and her voice has an effect on the world. The world comes alive, birds appearing and flowers blooming when in range of her voice, which of course means a bunch of puzzles.
Oh, are they all music puzzles?
No, it's basically...
I was going to say, are we suddenly in that episode of Strange New Worlds that Ahura had to figure out?
It's basically like when you sing certain flowers will open up spilling water, or other ones will open up to form platforms, stuff like that.
Okay.
Eventually, we find enough little firefly star dudes to complete the constellation. The big one in the top of the sky. As we climb the final ascent, though, a rubble happens, and the same inky black bird returns, though this time it twists and changes into a human face, like Gris.
Oh.
Screaming wildly, the world is dashed apart, and we fall into the waiting mouth of the void of the inky black ooze.
Oh, this is gross. I'm not here for it.
Within the void, there are pieces of the statue we have come to see and know, and climbing up them and singing at various points causes them to start to merge together.
Oh, good.
The ooze begins to roil and boil and encompass Gris, and just as the statue is about to finally come together, the ooze overtakes her, consuming her wholly. Then a singing voice breaks the ooze apart as the statue's voice comes to life.
Okay.
Gris is left in the statue's palm, coughing up goo before looking at the giant face. She walks over to the statue and embraces its face, a single tear falling from the statue's eyes as Gris kisses the statue.
Okay.
The statue brings her close to the start of the constellation bridge, and she climbs up into the heavens, fade to white.
Okay.
That's the end of the game,
That's
unless
what I
you
thought.
collected everything.
Oh.
In the hidden secret ending, again, it's not really a ending because you have to kind of get it before. It's basically a little side room you have to jump into and you get this scene. We find that Gris and the statue are both living, or were both living, real people, and it's heavily implied that the statue is Gris' mother. The Firefly dude's a gift from her mother to her. And that's the whole scene. There's not a lot.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Of course, the amount of interpretations of this game run the gamut. I've seen people say it's about the death of a parent.
I could see that with grief overtaking you.
I've seen the death of a child.
Yeah, I could see that too.
In general, just moving through the afterlife with no story. I don't buy that one.
No.
I saw one theory that was the choice of aborting a fetus or not.
Whoa. That is... Wow. A lot.
The developers have kept it pretty vague, so there's many interpretations. Due to achievements in the game that we do know, it centers around grief. There's 5 levels. Each level, there's a statue that gives you an achievement named for a stage of grief.
Okay. All right.
This is so blatant. I even found a funeral home when I was doing my research that did a write-up on the game and how it can help people understand the grieving process better.
Oh, that's so cool. Okay.
However, the generally accepted interpretation is that either Gris is mourning her mother's death or her mother is mourning Gris' death. I think Gris mourning her mother's death is more likely. I am curious to hear our listeners' interpretation as well as yours. And I still have no idea what the turtle is about.
Yeah, the turtle might not mean much of anything.
The turtle in the reason I brought up the fetus one is because the turtle is like sheltering Gris, who is the unborn fetus that was chosen to be kept and all this other stuff.
I don't know. Like that part just feels like a bit of a reach. I think to me it would make more sense that if we're talking about cycling through grief, that it would make more sense that Gris is the one that's suffering from it, because it isn't you're an active participant in the grief. The statue would make more sense to be the object of one's grief.
Yes, the thing that breaks apart at the beginning and sends you tumbling into a void of despair and
is static. Static, because once you're dead, there is no other change other than like you essentially as a person don't change. Your memory remains.
Which is what, so those little sigils that I talked about, they're called mementos.
Okay.
So.
Yeah. So I think that's why it makes sense. And of course, like for me, I think about that last scene and we're talking about grief. And it's kind of like, especially if we're going to go with the theme that's like about a child mourning a parent.
Yeah.
You know, I have not lost either of my parents yet, thankfully. But I think about what happened when I lost my grandmother. And now I'm going to tear up. Oh my gosh. Sorry, guys. I didn't plan to cry here, but here we are. But I think about, when I was going through that, there was a lot of like vacillating between so angry for so many different reasons about what was going on around her death. Yeah. And like this long and this missing and just like this there's a wish that things could have been a little different because she lived farther away, so I didn't get to see her as much as I wanted to.
Yeah.
And I think I finally got to a point of that acceptance and being more at the level of acceptance than any of those other stages. Just looking in the mirror and like I have some of my grandmother's features and able to look at her eyes, and it was just this reminder that she's not like 100% gone.
Yeah.
But she will there will always be the good parts of her that I want to keep will always be here.
Yeah.
And I feel like with a statues don't cry, but you reflect on what that person would be thinking, feeling, or how they would even, in a good relationship, how much they'd be supporting you in a situation. So they're not gone. You will always remember them. There will be a part of them that's always with you, but it's not the same as them actually being here. So you project it on like
a statue,
yeah. Or other stuff too. Like,
well, it's kind of like also like the memory of her mother singing is what saves her from the void at the end.
Right.
You know, so
exactly.
That's my interpretation anyway. That's why it kind of feels more like grieving her mother.
Gris and grieving. I mean, it feels very intentional, especially but you said they're Mexican based? Spanish based. Sorry. So Spain?
I believe so. I'm not 100% sure where they are based.
So, but yeah, so I don't know Spanish, so I don't know necessarily that wordplay, but in English it's interesting that it would be gris and grieving. Yeah, that's why I would go that our main character is the one that's doing the grief.
Mm-hmm.
The statue doing the grief, that's somebody who, if somebody thinks like that would be a signal to somebody that needs to get a little bit more like pushed to like some therapy for their grief if they feel stuck in it. You know what I mean?
Oh, okay. So you're saying like if that interpretation is true, that person needs to get some help, not the person making that assumption. Like if that was the true theory, if the statue is the mother,
yes,
the mother needs some help.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Because the mother's stuck.
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
I thought you were about to insult people with that interpretation.
No, I'm not trying to. No. I'm not trying to insult it. I think. Well, I just honestly, I really appreciate it. Forget if it was you or somebody else who pointed out to me that the stages of grief are not supposed to be felt in a specific order. It's actually supposed to be like a wild cycle of you go through all of them.
Yeah.
You know.
And that cycle is going to be different on the circumstance, different for the person, different for everything.
Yeah, different on the relationship and when you experience it. So I think that's why I would think somebody who's in movement is moving through all those stages. That would make more sense.
Yeah, I mean, there's other aspects to the game that have some theory. Is like the little robot thing is a pet or memory of a pet, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, or in some theories, a child that doesn't make it, and it's like that's just layering on too many deaths. Then I think.
No, but it is interesting that when you go through that grieving process, and especially when it was somebody you have really fond memories of, that you end up finding pieces of them over time.
Yeah.
You know, especially if it's a family member. I mean, I'll be honest, now with little Buddy, I feel like in him I see aspects of my grandmother, partly because he has a good amount of his looks for me, but he also has other recessive genes that come out that are from that line. So that are from my Irish grandmother, and that'll keep it at that.
So I knew this is a very layered, there's so many layers to this that we just interpret forever. So.
Yeah, and I think what'll be interesting when we do our live stream the Thursday after this is out to the public, it'll be interesting to see what else we can suss out for that first hour if we go on that presumption of that Gris is the one that's grieving. I think
it's more blatant when you're playing, I feel.
Okay. Yeah.
Just based on the animation, the mannerisms, like Gris collapsing is not just like, it's like it is like falling down.
I was gonna say, way to explain it in an audio medium there.
I am
he was showing it physically.
I'm doing a great job. It's not just like sitting down and being like sad. It is like collapsing in grief at seeing like part of the statue.
Yes.
So.
Yeah. No, that's that it's gosh. It's funny you mentioned the grief, and for some reason it's just bringing me back to my grandmother. I remember around that time, you were supposed to go to work one night, and my computer stopped working, and I just want to play a video game and forget it all. And I was so upset, and you literally called off, and you're like, I can't come in because I basically just needed your help, and we just bought my computer a new video card so I could just play Inquisition, because that was apparently what I needed to do to like help stoke my grief at the time.
Yeah.
Oh, it's crazy. It's a crazy, and it's nice to see that video games are exploring that.
Yep. Well, but thank you guys for listening.
Yeah, thank you so much for listening. I guess we'll catch you on the live streams. Don't forget, on the live streams that are not right after we release an episode, those are
Still Skies of Arcadia.
Still Skies of Arcadia, which feels like it'll be like that till the end of time.
No, we're almost done. We're getting there.
We're getting there. And we hope to see you there. We hope to see you in the next episode. Thanks so much for listening.
And have a Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Bye.
Bye.